Okay.
Um,
Now you're good.
so my job was to take pictures of the process of the scientists working on this, and why it was important for us to find these fossils is because they're about 15 million years old and they're really well preserved. You can see the colors in some of them before they're oxidized. And they're looking at the pores in the leaves. There's a scientific term that I'm not too familiar with that refers to that, but I guess the size of the pores in the leaves would tell you how much CO2 was around at that time, 15 million years ago. And then that's being used to model future atmospheric CO2 levels. And it appears that in the next 50 years, we'll be living very similar to how it was 15 million years ago. Um, and I think that, an argument I hear from a lot of climate change deniers is, well, the Earth goes in different cycles and this happens. Look back millions of years ago. But I don't think people that say that understand that Homo sapiens, like our species of animal, have only been around for the last 300,000 years. And the CO2 has never been higher for us as a species. So I think when I try to combat that, um, kind of attitude or belief, I try to remind people that, like, yes, I am concerned about bees and trees, but the primary concern is humans. Humans cannot survive in much warmer temperatures than we're already in. And that's really the main concern. So I try to reframe it, and I try to talk to people that don't, like, try to convince, or I don't know, I kind of approach conversations like that, like, what can I say to someone who doesn't really care about littering or bees, or I think they have a very earthy, crunchy idea of what it means to be a climate activist or to care about this, and I'm really trying to challenge that, because I think if just the scientific community cares about this, it's not going to change. So this is how I first got started. Let me look and see if we can find a picture of a fossil or two. But yeah, I came back from this trip, and oh, here's one. I was really amazed about what we were working on, but it really took me several months of interpreting his data and doing different work to really dive in. So I think that also makes me a little bit compassionate towards the climate change deniers, that it does really take, this isn't super easy to understand. There's many layers, there's many different aspects you can approach the topic and learn about from. So I think it is hard for people to understand. And I actually looked up the other day if the United States has any climate change science mandate that it needs to be taught in schools, and we don't have any national mandate. So I think that could be a really great way to move the needle on climate progress. We start introducing this topic at a younger age. I think it will kind of combat that fossil fuel propaganda that's been really prevalent over the last 50 years. So, oh, here's one. So you can see how the oxygen starts hitting the leaf, and it's really amazing to be able to open these up and see that color change. And there's only 50 people that live in this entire town. And my professor has been visiting there for the last like 30 years, going once or twice a year to do different elements of fossil research. But he said that when he was in school, they actually were training him as a geologist to be able to find fossil fuels. And the irony now is that he's studying fossils to combat the industry and publish data on what this means for the future. This was some type of seed or something. So it was really neat, and I think if kids science classes, summer camps could go out and open up these fossils. I mean, it's like clay, it kind of splits right open. I think that they'd be a lot more excited about climate change. So I said to my professor, found another one. Oh yeah, this is a good one. There's a couple of different things here. So I said to my professor, like, this is what it looks like, the racetrack. So they accidentally found this. And I said, okay, there's only 50 people that live here. There's no Wi-Fi connection. I mean, it's really in the middle of nowhere. And I said, how many, like, are we going to run out of fossils? And he's like, no, they're for miles. And I'm like, they're for miles? Could I
Hmm.
buy the land down the street and be able to find fossils? And he's like, yeah, I did that study 8 years ago. I could tell you exactly where they are. And I'm like, well, how come no one's bought this land and created a summer camp or a museum or something to teach people about this and allow the public to see it? And he said, because we haven't brought people like you out here, we keep bringing science students that want to look at and study the cells and stuff. So I am approaching things not in a trying to extract, I don't know, not in a negative capitalistic extraction way, but this could be a way that we could have a business and get people understanding and excited about this. And they could take home a fossil and we could look at the future projections. And I don't know, that's one of my business ideas now. So if I make it
Super.
big, I'll be having a museum or summer camp or something dedicated to my professor out here in Clarkia, Idaho. So that's how this all started. But the more I learned, the more I couldn't relax about it. I kept getting more worked up about it. So I just went up to New Hampshire yesterday, or Monday, and I presented this. So this might have a couple irrelevant things that I'll skip by, but this is kind of made the job of presenting tonight a little bit easier. And then I'll show you the pictures from COP28, but this kind of has the story
Hmm.
along with it. So I was presenting at a geology conference as a person with a business degree. I think I was the only one. So I told the audience a couple of jokes, told them how I got my job that I currently work in, but this is the fossil research area. So they operate like a motocross area, different
Ah,
competitions come through and use this. So they completely found these fossils by accident. And I just explained kind of what I did to you, all that I was going from thinking about, my stock portfolio and marketing and social media business ideas to, okay, we have this climate change problem. Maybe this is also something I'm interested in. Um, this graph I think is powerful. Just teaching climate is a powerful reduction strategy because if
hmm.
people at you know 15, 20, 30 learn about this, they have many more years than they didn't know about it to actually make a difference. So I think when we think, oh, it's so hard, what can we even do about this? Why don't we just talk about it? Why don't we just have conversations about this? Bring up, oh, did you see in the news today? February was the hottest February, things like that. I think that's effective if you don't know where to start with everything. Or some people are not into politics, they don't want to get into that sphere. And my professor always says it's a shame that this has turned into a political issue because it's really not. It's really like an issue for humanity. So this is my professor. He changed my life, Hong Yang. He's from China, a great guy. I'm sure he could talk to the group if anyone was interested in his research. Very impressive, humble, kind person. Um, so then I discussed how environmental science degrees in 2023, only 27,000 Americans got those, but about 300,000 people got a business degree,
Hmm.
graduate with a business degree. And then, with heat, an increase in heat, there's going to be new, kind of medical issues arising with that for psychology. There's going to be more eco anxiety. So I was trying to presenting to a room full of geologists, expand their mind a little bit about what kind of students might be interested in their work, or like they shouldn't write off the business students that have to take like a science prerequisite as they don't care because they might actually like me. And then I presented how each discipline in business is shifting to embrace sustainability. So, as part of my research for Dr. Yang, I interviewed 30 Bryant alumni during my senior year that work in some combination of business and um, climate or ESG sustainability. And I found like the following kind of trends. So I think if just, the science community cares about this, nothing will really change because they've known about it for 125 plus years. Obviously the science gets better and more concrete. And I don't think that the problem is that there's not strong enough evidence. I think the problem is that the people who have the money and power and, if we live in a capitalist society, we really have to empower capitalism to be able to solve this instead of see this as a threat. So this is kind of my attempt to open people's eyes a little bit. And if, business majors want to work in business, but they, also want to feel like they're doing something good at the end of the day, all these industries are shifting and have job opportunities in this area. Then this is just about knowledge of climate change. In Benin and Haiti, 36% of people have never heard of climate change, which is really sad because they're going to be, countries that are really affected by this. And so we have work to do when it comes to climate literacy and justice. And then this one, it was about, is it happening? And just kind of depicts that it doesn't really matter exactly the region. Like I thought, I was surprised by Australia being one of the countries least likely. So yeah, there's definitely a communication issue in this space that I think we can all be champions of and learn how to better communicate this information and approach teaching others. Then I talked about how the benefit of having international student perspectives, because if you're from Greenland, you might be seeing a lot of ice loss. But if you're from Cape Cod, like me, or us, like you might be worried about sea level rise. So I think having many different geographical representations of how this is impacting people helps to paint the whole picture, especially if, some of the deniers don't want to believe they have conspiracies that, oh, science is funded by the groups. And I don't know, I feel like the personal stories can go far to kind of shift perspectives. And then this is at COP28 in Dubai. So although there's new evidence that climate change affects women more, we're more likely to die in natural disasters, more likely to have complications in pregnancies with children, things like that. Girls are more likely to be pulled out of school before boys if there's climate related disasters, more in developing countries that might put stress on a family and someone has to do more work in farming, things like that. Girls receive less education. So it is also a women's issue. And it's funny that when I look at the picture, there's not many women that are deciding what to do about this. So that's another reason why it was personally important for me to go to Dubai. And for my first job after, Linda, is it okay if I run over about 4 minutes?
Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should give about 10 more minutes for this.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. So then when I was approaching graduation, I started to ask at Bryant, what's going on? What are we doing about climate change? We're a business school, but we can't just ignore it. We can't pretend it's not happening. And I said, like, who here can I talk to about sustainability? And they said, like, nobody works here on sustainability. We just have, the professors that you already do the research with. They're the ones working on it. And I'm like, well, they're producing research for journals and presentations. They're not working on how Bryant is going to reduce its carbon footprint, what programs and initiatives we're working on. So I found that problematic. So I made meetings with all the vice presidents at Bryant, and I said, we can't we can't say on our website that we're committed to sustainability if nobody here works on it. So I got them to create my first job out of college. So I'm the first sustainability coordinator at Bryant. And I'm doing things like this survey where I ask students, how important is this to your career? And overwhelmingly, most people think that this is important. Oh, thank you for the clapping. So I think now I'll show you the Dubai picture. So then I saw that UMass Lowell, I was 3 months into my job, and I saw that they were going to Dubai for COP28. And I thought, that sounds great. I'm really concerned about this. I want to go. There's not enough women going. I heard that there's 2,000 fossil fuel lobbyists going. I want to go. I want to represent the women, the young people, Americans who, are creating this problem and are denying that it's happening. And so I asked my boss, I said, UMass Lowell is going, and I talked to them and they said, this is their plan. Do you think I could go too? It will increase our sustainability score in the international affairs category. It will be good marketing. It will show that we're committed to this. I'll learn a lot. And she said, no, oh no, this is your first job out of college. I mean, that's completely unheard of. And I said, well, I kind of like doing unheard of things. So I really want to go. And she said, oh no, we can't fund that. We can't support that. And I said, okay, well, it's really important for me to go because I'm leaving work often in tears. And, this data that I'm looking at for the job is, creating some personal stress for me. So I think something to make me feel better and feel like an action step will be to go. So if you don't want to pay for it, I'm going to take my vacation time and go, on my own because it just matters that much to me. She didn't really like that. She said, I can't tell you what to do, but like, I guess, you can do whatever you want. Do you even have enough vacation days? And I looked it up and I only had 2 vacation days, but sometimes I just get these ideas in my head and I just don't stop. So I took off a Friday and a Monday and flew out of Logan after work on Thursday and was only in Dubai for 2 nights and got 2 days at the conference. Met a lot of young people, met a friend from Morocco, and just, was kind of there to shake hands and make connections and learn. And this is like the Disney World for climate activists. I mean, there was exhibits, there was art, and anyone in the world can go. There's the blue zone that's for all the delegates from the countries, but then there's the green zone that is just open to anyone, completely free. You have to pay for your hotel and your plane ticket there. But I emptied my bank account, got the old credit card out. That's the limits recently been raised with the big girl job, and decided I need to be there. And then on night 2, I was like, wow, 48 hours in Dubai is flying by. I think I need to book a sunset desert safari trip and not go to sleep and see the sunrise over the desert and ride a camel. So I was really just living my absolute best life. I mean, people were like, Taylor, you can't go to Dubai alone. It's a Middle Eastern country. You're a woman. You don't have enough time to take off of work. That's so expensive. Well, I paid off the credit card limit the next month and made it happen. And I also kind of wanted to stick it to, the people who are telling me I'm crazy, or my dad also is mad at me about my job. He doesn't believe in climate change. So things with him have been rough. And I'm like, if you're going to be calling me Greta, I might just go right to the United Nations conference and be there myself. So although, there's some emissions to get to the conference, I think it's kind of important for the branding of this isn't just talk. I'm not just trying to shove this down your throat and not do anything myself. I really care about showing up and learning and whatnot. So might have a couple other pictures on my LinkedIn. But that's the story of how I went to Dubai, how I've been making all this happen. So really excited to now get involved with the chapter too, or talk to anyone about this more. Let's see. If you have LinkedIn, you can feel free to add me. I love LinkedIn. I posted about the postcards.
Saw our photograph go by.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So this was about the Dubai. So I don't know. I think, the reach I had, this reached 7,000 people. So I don't know. I just thought that was important. And this was me announcing that I'm going to go. So yeah, that's my story. That's about me. And I'm sure I'll have many more interesting stories in the future about all this.
Wow.
I think that's just great that you went on your own and on your own
Thank
initiative
you.
and paid for it yourself when you had to.
Thank you. I thought sometimes I'm a big believer in manifestation and putting things out into the world, making them happen. So I have a vision board on my door that has all my dreams, and one of the quotes says, "Every dollar I spend comes back to me multiplied." So hopefully that trip will, open new doors and jobs and things like that. So I think it was well worth it.
For your case, for your sake, I really hope that's true.
Thank you. Thank you.
Taylor, when are you going to meet Greta?
I know. So I actually met the UN has like I guess a council for young people. So the friend from Morocco that I met, I posted on Instagram, the haters keep calling me Greta, and he said, oh, I'm actually friends with her. So I don't think it might not be too far off that I get to meet her one day.
Well, good for you. It's really admirable what you're doing, and it takes a lot of courage and initiative and, willpower
Thank
and,
you.
just going for it. So that's really wonderful. Good for you.
Thank you.
Any words of advice you can offer us as older folks?
I think thank you all for what you're doing, because, I think it's when I look at the data, I think in the next 20 years, there's going to be changes. But my grandmother's 93, so I've been thinking, if I live to be 100, what is that going to look like? What world am I going to leave behind? So I think a major problem for a lot of this is that, older people, whether it's the CEOs of companies or in political seats, they might kind of have an awareness that, yeah, all right, that climate change is real, but it's not really going to affect my lifetime. So I think it's, really, really nice that you're all working so hard on this. And yeah, I don't know. I hope that I hope that things get better. I read a quote that hope is a renewable source of energy. So yeah,
Yeah,
we
well,
just gotta keep hoping.
yeah, no, that's great. And it's sort of, what can we do as an older generation to help this effort and to give you all younger generation support in your effort?
Hmm.
You're obviously going to be dealing with it a lot longer than we are.
Hmm.
There just any thoughts? Maybe there's a way to if something occurs to you to pass them along, but just getting words of advice from young people like yourself who are so committed to this is would mean a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I'll think about that. I think, just showing up to these meetings and doing what you're all doing is a lot more than most people. So yeah, I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I was
Time for a
interested,
question?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
I was
Go ahead,
interested in
Carol.
comments about the lack of education in climate change area. Are there organizations that are working on that? How can we move the needle on that problem?
Yeah, it actually just was like a question that popped into my head. I thought, like, did I ever really learn about climate change in school? And something I found in my research is that a lot of teachers are a little hesitant to talk about climate change because it's so complex, and it's because, some parents, like my own dad, might, call up the school and say, "Why are they talking about that?" So I think that if there was, some type of national mandate, that would really help things. And I don't, this is just kind of a fact I discovered in the last week. So I'm going to do more research on if there already are organizations or efforts to make a change. But if not, I think that that's something, that's probably most people would agree. Oh yeah, we should be teaching that in school. But I think sometimes some of these facts just get lost, and we have so much information at our fingertips. It's almost can be almost a disadvantage how much there is out there. You don't know what to focus on. But I think that is quite interesting, because I don't think I had any climate change education, middle, high school, or college until I got this research job in my senior year. So they almost missed me.
Okay, well, keep us posted from your research. Thank you.
Awesome.
Taylor, I was just wondering if there was any one session you attended that stood out for you when you were at COP 28.
What's wrong?
I can't hear
Yeah,
myself.
I think there was one that was an exhibit. It was like kind of like an art museum, or not art museum, maybe like a Boston Science Museum kind of thing. You walked through and they had different screens with different facts about climate change, and one of the parts of the exhibit was like mannequins of small children with gas masks, and it was saying that that's not, this isn't science fiction. And my professors also said that he was asked to work with NASA to produce some type of spacesuit for Earth by about 2070. There could be need for some regions if you're going to leave your house for 5-6 hours. You know, in Africa, you might need to put on some type of protective gear that models like a spacesuit. So to see the mannequins of little girls and boys with, you know, I was like, oh, if we didn't like the COVID masks, we're really not going to like needing to put on these gas masks. I mean, it looked like a war thing. So I think that exhibit really stood out to me as, well, like that's what's kind of at risk. Do I want my grandchildren to have to wear those to go to school?
Yeah, sounds like that would leave an impression.
Yeah, and they were a healthcare company that put together that sponsored that exhibit.
Well, Taylor, we are so thrilled to have you in our chapter. It's wonderful to
Thank
meet
you.
you. You have a wonderful story. You have so many ideas, and we're always looking for ideas. So we just really look forward to working with you and
Thank you. I
supporting you
appreciate that.
and going forward. And I really appreciate, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to more of our agenda, but I just want to say thank you so much. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. And inspiring to hear
Absolutely.
you. Absolutely.
And if anyone wants to email me, I'll put my email in case there's other questions.
Super.
Oh,
Thank you.
terrific. Thank you so much.
Of course.
That's a hard act to follow, I will say. But we do have, I sent out a message this morning because Ryan Zinke from Montana introduced a resolution that would be anti-climate change, or anti-carbon tax, I'm sorry. And it is going to come to a vote on Friday. It's not going to go anywhere because it's a resolution, but not a bill. But the optics would be terrible if that passed in the House. So I did send an email to folks asking you to call Bill Keating and ask him to vote no on the resolution. It's resolution 86. It's going to come to a vote on Friday. And so for those of you who have made that call, I really appreciate it. For those of you who haven't, what we'd like would be a phone call rather than an email, just to show support for carbon pricing. It's just so untrue to say that carbon pricing would be a drag on the economy. Certainly the climate disasters we're having more frequently every year, now there's a drag on the economy. But
Linda, excuse me for interrupting, but I did call and actually somebody picked up almost immediately. And they were very easy to speak with. So that was great. Thank you for throwing that
they
up.
are wonderful. The staff, Keating has some really great staffers in Washington and here. And I'd just like to welcome Dr. von Herzen. My goodness, are you in which hemisphere are you in right now? Are you in?
I'm in the Far East in the Western Pacific Ocean. We do have a home in Falmouth, but I just got your email actually and had an opening in my calendar. So very happy to join all of you this evening.
Yeah.
We are building seaweed forests in the Western Pacific, and things are going very well. So it's great to see such a great group here this week.
Yeah. Well, I've followed your newsletter. I get your newsletter periodically, and it's just so inspiring to see what you're doing. It just is
thank you,
so
Linda.
hopeful.
I've got something to share with you, and my background is not seaweed today, it's marine clouds. And I just want to share with you that we have a new group forming at rebrighten.org, and we're working to rebrighten the planet in our decades. Two decades ago, our planet was brighter with marine clouds and sea ice than it is today. And this dimmer, duller planet's absorbing more heat. And so if we can rebrighten our marine clouds, we can actually get back to pre-industrial levels of brightness and hopefully brighten up the world physically, intellectually, and morally, hopefully in the future years. So
Wow.
we've got a growing group. I'm happy to say we meet weekly on Wednesday, and in 2 weeks, it's going to be a US friendly time zone. We're shifting with daylight savings. So I'm happy to post more information, but definitely check out rebrighten.org. We have folks from the UK, from Australia, and the US that are all involved. And it's about, James Hansen's come out and said point blank, most of the warming we've seen is due to loss of natural aerosols and other aerosols over the ocean, and explain 5 degrees of warming in the North Sea last summer, and the loss of most of our coral reefs off the Florida Keys. The reef I first dove on when I was younger than Taylor is now, it was like 50 years ago, I dove on the Sombrero Reef off Key Largo. And that was a reef that died last August. The New York Times had a audio podcast. They went out with the NOAA researchers, dove on the reef, and they said, oh, it's not bleached, it's not white, it must be okay. They dove in water that was 101 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll die if you stay in that water too long. I mean, it's above body temperature. You will overheat and die. It's just, so they go in that water, they look down, and the reef isn't bleached, it's dead.
Oh, no.
The reef just died. It's just much too warm. That's all related to the IMO and its infinite wisdom cut all the marine aerosols for the whole Atlantic Ocean and affected everything from the Florida Keys to England. And so people are slowly waking up that we're now doubled our rate of global warming from just a few years ago. So rebrightening natural marine clouds, and it turns out the kelp forests have a lot to do with natural aerosols as well. We're doing the research to make this happen, and we're standing up very small projects to restore the sea spray and the cloud condensation nuclei that can rebrighten these marine clouds and reflect enough sunlight back into space. And that's local interventions. I think in the future, we could do this on Cape Cod even. But it's early days, it's all volunteers. And we're just saying there's a grassroots demand for a healthy climate. And it's going to relate to, keeping our clouds bright. Because according to my colleague, Tapio Schneider, a professor at Caltech, a warmer world has fewer and fewer clouds, which is really a runaway feedback loop. And we've got to do what we can. There are 3 legs to the climate triad: emissions to zero, 1,000 gigatons of carbon removal, and climate repair, so we can have a healthy climate while we're getting our carbon budget back in balance.
Well, we'd be very interested in the rebrightening. So happy to check it out on the website and see what kind of webinars or information you have, because
Yes, Taylor.
Is your group like a scientific group, or is it like a business-based group? Like, do you need like venture capital, like funding to like do this, or is it more like researching if this is as effective as we hope it is?
I'm glad you're asking, Taylor. We've realized now for the first year that the Climate Foundation is really a nonprofit startup studio. And what we're focused on is we start with the volunteer efforts, and then we apply to NASA for funding like we did last week. And we try to get some funded projects going. And then we basically incubate and nurture these projects through to the point where they can become sustainable local businesses. And that started with a lot of the kelp foresting that we're doing with marine permaculture. But at the very earliest stages right now is Rebrighten. And we hope that someday we'll be able to provide tools to local communities so that community-led organizations can regenerate their life in the ocean, and also potentially, regenerate their marine clouds that keep them cool during the summer. And that could be all across the world. And so these local efforts and community-led efforts we see as being key. And ultimately it's about economic sustainability. So we've just started raising capital for some of our agricultural biostimulants for the seaweed growing and whatnot. And so it's a hybrid where we start out with volunteer efforts. We do nonprofit research. And then we eventually spin out sustainable businesses that people can operate it in their communities.
Really cool.
Thank you. Thanks for asking, Taylor.
So if people are interested in helping or volunteering or getting involved in any way, what do they do?
Well, I'd say go to the climatefoundation.org website, and we have a volunteer button. And if you don't have time to volunteer, contributions are welcome as well. And we have a newsletter, so sign up for the newsletter that comes out quarterly, as you've already mentioned. And effectively, we're one step away from an economically sustainable hectare of seaweed growing using deep water irrigation. So, very happy to keep in touch with people that way. And we have a growing list of volunteers working on projects around the world. And we're thrilled to have this increasing. I'm amazed that, the size of our Rebrightening group has doubled in the last 2 or 3 months. I'm sorry to say that Stephen Salter passed away, but he's a professor who for 20 years had been working on rebrightening marine clouds. And but his legacy lives on. And I'm very happy that this year, he worked so hard for so many decades against all the prevailing tides and the conventional wisdom and all the rest. And now in the year of his death, the UK is funding $20 million of UK research. There are people really talking about it, and to me it's ironic and poignant that that finally he's getting his work is getting traction, and it's sad that it's posthumous, but we're going to carry on his legacy.
Oh, wonderful. That's sort of how we feel about Marshall Saunders as well, that he passed away probably 2 years or not that long ago, but
Okay.
we're carrying it on. We're going to get it done.
Well, so much depends on a predictable and rising price on carbon. So we've been fans of CCL for more than a decade, and I'm hoping that there's some progress with the bipartisan commissions and other things. I haven't kept up on the latest.
Well, there's I'm just going to sort of cherry pick a little bit in our agenda, because so wonderful to have Taylor's presentation and to have you. You're just a delightful to hear your news.
Thank you.
We think that a carbon price is going to be necessary to get to our 2030 and 2050 goals, and we just won't get there without it. So we continue to work on policy. Each month, the Climate Lobby has an action of the month. This month, and I haven't sent that out yet, just because I sent out the other notice today about calling your congressman about the anti-carbon tax resolution. I mean, of all people, Ryan Zinke, the guy, I thought we were done with him, but he's not. He's in Congress. There is movement on a bill in the Senate that will ask the Department of Energy to start collecting carbon intensity data on certain kinds of products like cement and aluminum and crude oil and so forth, because without that data of the intensity of our products, we won't be able to negotiate with the EU when their carbon, basically they are moving along with implementing basically a carbon border tariff. So if they buy stuff from dirty producers, they're going to pay a premium to import that product. And so that EU action, and there's bipartisan interest in Congress in having a carbon border adjustment in the US, because most of our processes are actually cleaner than they are in a lot of other countries, certainly probably in China. So, from a trade standpoint, it could benefit our businesses. And of course, from a carbon pricing standpoint, having a carbon border adjustment, that's part of the carbon pricing bill that we would like to see. So we want to encourage our senators and our congressmen to co-sponsor it, because it got through committee in the Senate. That's a good thing. I mean, you don't read about this stuff in the news. You just read about the fights that they're having over stuff. I wanted to spend a few minutes on why should we price carbon? Because we've been working on trying to help members of our chapter learn more about the policies. The policies that Climate Lobby has, they're not quite as obvious to understand because they're tax policy or fiscal policy. It's not like saying we're going to plant trees or we're going to restore a wetland. So I put together a short presentation about carbon pricing. Though before I get to that, I'd like to see, Evan, are you still there? You wanted to talk a little bit about the Carbon Dioxide Removal Leadership Act.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. And sorry I was late, Dr. Herzen. It was very good to hear you. Thank you for coming in and speaking to us about the project that you're working on. It sounds really interesting, and I'd really like to get involved if possible and learn more about it. But the Carbon Dioxide Removal Leadership Act is a bill that I've been lobbying for with the Open Air Collective in Massachusetts, and it was recently passed out of the Transportation, Utilities, and Energy Committee favorably, and now is in the Ways and Means Committee. And we're just looking to try to get some more support. It's a procurement program that would have the state buying carbon removal from companies here in Massachusetts, and it aligns very well with the Mass Leads Act and with what Governor Maura Healey was talking about in her State of the Commonwealth address, where she said that she wants Massachusetts to be a climate tech leader and exporter, and this would be a huge step in getting us there. It's kind of like a research and development bill to help us get carbon dioxide removal where it needs to be. It's just kind of like to get some rubber on the road and create a competitive environment for these technologies to evolve to where they are going to need to be for us to achieve net zero. So we're just asking people to make phone calls or send emails. There's a call tool that I can share in the chat. It's Call Your Governor call tool. But if anybody is so inclined, it would be great if you could email or call either your it's right now it's just a Senate bill. It doesn't have a House bill. But if people were inclined, they could call or email their senators and or people on the Ways and Means Committee, as well as Senator Barrett also has a little bit of control over the future of this bill as well, I think. But right now, I think we're looking for people to call the governor, and that would be great. I'll share the call tool in the chat.
You can put that in the chat, and I will next week. I'll send out an email to people with the information about who they should call and so forth, because I'm about to leave to go to the conference in upstate New York on Friday. So I'm running around with that. And I've also just made one request asking people to make phone calls. I don't like to have them be one after the other because people are already overwhelmed. But so that bill is in the Ways and Means Committee now.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's really good that it got out of the TUE committee. So my guess is that if that got that it might get incorporated in the omnibus bill that hopefully will get passed by the end of June or beginning of July. The one that Dylan Fernandez talked about, that now they have all the pieces that they've looked at. So I don't think it would hurt to ask your state rep as well. Just say that it's a relatively inexpensive bill. And it's paid for by closing a tax loophole. So it's not like it's new money. Anyway, well, I thank you for your efforts on that. Absolutely. So is this your Evan just put the address for is this for contacting Governor Healey?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, all right. So Wouldn't be
And
bad.
thanks for letting me share. Thanks for
Yeah.
letting me share about that.
Yeah. So, so I'm going to leap from that, and I know we had a couple of other things on the agenda. We're going to be doing more postcarding towards the end of April and early May. We'll send out information what weekends we're going to write postcards, and we're also going to have a table at the Herring Festival in Plymouth, which is April 20th on Earth Day. And there's going to be some films at the Wareham Library on April 17th. So lots of good stuff going on. But let's take a look. Bear with me while I try to share my screen here.
I'm curious if these meetings have a calendar entry or a regular meeting time. Is it at some regular interval at these times?
You mean, our monthly meeting? We meet the third Wednesday of the month, 7 p.m. on Zoom. So I don't know if you must be on my email list.
Yes.
How did you?
I think,
okay. All right. So
I saw the email, but normally I use calendar, and I'll try to create a calendar entry if you don't have one already.
Thank you. I'm not very knowledgeable with newfangled apps.
No worries.
I worked with computers years ago.
I'll use the
yes,
third
but third Wednesday of the month, 7 to 8, we have a Zoom.
Okay.
So
And
let
we're
me.
already on daylight savings, I assume.
Yes, we are, and just went over about a week ago. So let me see if I can share my screen here with my slideshow. Can you still see the slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So there's a new report that just came out from the Climate Leadership Council, which is for years has been a proponent for carbon pricing, and they have this report called Revisiting Carbon Pricing in a New Landscape. It's very easy to find. You can just Google on the name and pull that up. So I went to the executive summary on that, and what does it mean? What does a carbon price mean? It's the price is on the emissions. When you have a fossil fuel and that fuel is burned, how much emissions does that make? So it's a fee, so many dollars per ton of CO2 emitted. So it's based on the dirtiness of the fuel. So coal would have a higher fee than natural gas. And the bill that CCL supports would start with a low fee per ton and just relentlessly increase it every year until the reduction goals have been met. And who pays this fee? There's a lot of confusion about that. But the company that produces the fossil fuel will pay the fee, and the fee will be assessed as close to the source of the fuel as possible. So at the well, at the pump, at the port of entry. And of course, when the companies have to pay more to sell their products, they're going to pass some of that price increase on to the consumers. So the price of gasoline will go up at the pump, heating, fuel oil, natural gas. So that is why the climate lobby supports taking the money that is collected by the government from those carbon fees and just returning them equally to American households. So that will actually, most of the bottom 40% of income levels will come out equal or a little bit better. So we don't want to hurt the people who are living more financially constrained. So anyone want to comment on that? I think those of you who have been members for a long time know that. Some of you who are newer might not have been through this. So this is a graph from that report from the Carbon Leadership Council. And the green line here is existing emissions. You can see they actually peaked in the US at 2005. So there is some slight good news. And the red line here is the trajectory that's projected with our current policies. So I assume that includes the Inflation Reduction Act and whatever else we have on the table that is helping us reduce our emissions. And the blue line is our goals. 27% down by 2025, reaching net zero at 2050. And that yellow in between that's the gap. That's what we haven't, our current policies are not enough to get us there. So this chart puts a carbon price on. So you've got the same green line. This is here we are up till 2023 or whatever. This is our current trajectory here, the red. And this sort of greenish dotted line, that is where the trajectory will be if the, and there's many variations of a carbon tax. This Baker-Schultz plan, I think, is a $40 a ton, starts at $40 a ton of emissions, and it increases inflation plus 5% every year. So there's lots of different ways to model it. And so you can see, there's a huge difference. This is why the climate lobby supports this policy, because it will get us where we need to go. Why a carbon price? I just saw that, well, the EPA just announced new emission standards for vehicles, for cars. It was in the paper today. And the first thing I read was that they expect that those new regulations will probably be tied up in court. Hopefully not, but it's very hard to tie a carbon price up in court, because that's what Congress is chartered to do, which is to manage, set taxes, collect money. It's not really a regulatory approach, it's a tax approach. And so it's much less likely to end up tied up for years. It's also the least expensive thing we can do to bring down emissions, because Inflation Reduction Act was an enormously expensive. I mean, it's close to $1 billion, or $750 billion, I guess, over 10 years of incentives and rebates and tax credits. And those are great because it's really picked up. People are investing in new companies, new startups, and homeowners are going out and putting solar panels on the roofs. So it's really been good, but it's very expensive to do it that way. And we don't have the money. We probably don't have the money for, to get down to net zero just through the carrot approach. We need a stick, and that's what the carbon price is. So that is why, for 10 years, the climate lobby focused solely on carbon pricing. And now in the past 18 months, they have now expanded their policy portfolio to include healthy forests, building electrification, and different things like that. But we believe that a carbon price is something that we really have to have in order to get to our goals. So that's kind of my soapbox pitch. And I invite folks to have comments or questions or observations. There's a bunch of bills out there in Congress. The one we prefer is the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, because it has the gradual increasing fee, and it gives all the money back to households. So that's the one we would love to see passed.
Linda, a question. So on one hand, the United States government subsidizes the oil and gas companies industry. On the other hand, it is going to tax them for using oil.
It's not for you. Well, it's for the pollution that their product causes. So if the tax would be on the on fossil fuels that are going to be combusted. Some fossil fuels are used to make plastic garbage cans and stuff like that. That's not considered burning the oil. That's a different use of it. So yes, that would be a charge. The subsidies are enormously hard to get rid of, though ideally we'd get rid of those too. But the carbon border adjustment that the EU has put into place and will go into they started a year and a half ago with implementation, and that challenges us to come up with our own carbon border adjustment. And then with that, we believe a carbon tax follows that naturally. So
you showed the chart, the diagram of the plans. Are there any results today at 2024?
Well,
how many taxes were risen?
Well, we don't have a carbon fee federally yet. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I'm asking you what's the implementation of the plan?
Well, the plan is, if the bill, when the bill passes Congress, they would set a, the projections usually assume that it's going to start at the beginning of the next calendar year. And then the work has been done to put together how we would implement it, how the IRS would be responsible for collecting the money and dispersing the money back to households. We've been working to put together what agencies would have to do what, but none of it has been, it's still just a bill. It's not ready for implementation, not until it passes. We're the grassroots army that is going to try to get the bill passed. And I see Evan has his hand raised. So, Evan?
Quick question. Yeah, I was just wondering, is there any proposed legislation for getting rid of the fossil fuel subsidies that exist currently?
Yes. There's, in fact, Bill Keating had filed a bill to eliminate the fossil fuel subsidies. I don't know if other congressmen have. It's not really going anywhere. It's not really going anywhere.
I just
go ahead, Jan.
I just read or heard something. I never knew what these subsidies were about, and it said that it was to lower the price of fuel.
Right.
At the pump, like.
Yes.
Is that
yes.
what that is? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it obviously helps the oil companies, and our government has been pretty well aligned with oil companies over the past 50 years or so. I mean, America depends on cars to get around, and we depended on fossil fuels for decades for electricity. So it was a national policy to make it cheap. When I lived in Germany in 1960, America, because my father was in the military, we bought our gasoline on the army post. Even in 1960, Europeans were paying 4 or 5 times more per gallon than Americans paid for gas and oil. That's why Europe is more efficient than we are, because they've paid high prices forever. But they want cheap oil. So, and the car manufacturers want cheap oil, and but it isn't cheap. The price, that the cost of the damage that they're producing is not factored into the price of the product. So the carbon price puts a more realistic cost on fossil fuels. They are expensive because they're so destructive to the environment.
I have another quick question. Is there anything being proposed as far as trying to get fossil fuel companies to provide funding for decarbonization efforts or carbon removal? as far as you know.
Yeah, they talk a good story about how they're moving in the right direction, but one would take it with a grain of salt. I don't know if Taylor's still on the call now, but what did you see in COP28 with all the oil sheiks wandering around? Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry, I had to get up and oh, there we go. So I think that there definitely is some element of the COP conferences that's like oil used to broker deals and kind of act like they care when they don't. But yeah, I'm not sure if I know too much of like the ins and outs. I didn't get to really see that, but I did see some news stories about the leader, like the president of COP28, is like a oil baron type person. So
Yeah,
a little disappointing, but I still think that hopefully most of the people part of it are there for the right reasons.
Could I just ask, what was your impression on the sincerity of the president of COP28 to decarbonize or to decelerate fossil fuel extraction and sales?
Yeah. Well, I feel like, it's really hard to know exactly, but the reality is that there's not honestly a whole lot of oil, coal, petroleum sources left. If they're looking at, the next 100 years, there's some estimates that by 2060, 2080, they could be gone. So I think if I was the CEO of one of these big firms, I'd be switching over, while you're making profits, while you don't have customers all up in arms, only, a small percentage that kind of are enlightened to these ideas. So hopefully regions like Dubai that have made their money on oil can kind of take these cues and start switching over. But I think the idea that the transition is an economic threat is really dangerous. I think that, we race to the moon. I don't know why we don't want to be the first country to get this done. And I feel like that would open up so many new industries. And there's going to be, I feel like things that are going to solve this haven't even fully been invented yet. Or I don't know, with the whole marine cloud brightening concept and geoengineering. I've been looking more into that concept as well, and it really interests me because I feel like what if nothing budges with the oil companies and stuff? Maybe we need to think about alternative ideas.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Taylor, I also have a question for you. I recently found out that the United States is a great producer of oil. I used to think that the U.S. Imports oil, but now there is an evidence that the U.S. exports oil. What do you think about that? What is the truth in here?
Fracking.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We used to import, but then we discovered fracking, and that has changed the whole gas structure.
I believe we're the largest exporter of oil and gas in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, natural gas. Yeah, that's what I heard too.
What, the United States?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was in the Globe today, in fact, because there was a big the oil companies had a big conference somewhere. I forgot what country it was in, but they were talking about how the US is leading. Dick?
There's several oil companies that have done some exploration of providing electricity from alternate sources like solar radiation. But what they find is that the profit levels are nowhere near what they get with oil. So they lose interest in a big hurry.
Again, just think, if we had a properly set carbon fee, then it would change the whole economics of oil, of of energy. So
Mhm.
that's why, that it's going to be a huge lift to get that passed, but we think eventually it will happen because it'll have to happen. But these companies that have so much, their products are so profitable. They want to keep making money every moment they can until they jump ship. And I know that the Arab countries are looking at future beyond oil, because they don't have much else. So they're trying to diversify their economies.
That's right.
But time is not on our side. We don't have infinite time. So I see that it's 11 after 8, and I'd like to just ask if anyone has a round of comments. And I apologize, I just wanted to get something out there about carbon pricing, because we want everyone to understand it. And there's certainly trainings available on the Climate Lobby website. There's a lot of good sources for it, but I think we should all feel comfortable enough to at least know what it is and know why we're supporting this bill. So go around.
Glenda, just a big thank you for all that you do and for all that you put together for all our meetings. This was a wonderful meeting, great information. Really appreciate the updates from Dr. Van Herzen and Evan and Taylor's presentation. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Dr. Herzen. I appreciate it.
I mean, we can do this. We can do this. So optimism is a choice, as they say. So anyway, well, thank you so much. I will let you know when the recording is up, and I'm going to turn it off right now.